Welcome to another episode. Men are the prize, the podcast, and I'm Harvey, your host. Hope the week is treating you well. Hope the day is treating you well. I have another great guest coming. What do we talk about before we bring in our great guest? For this episode, we're going to be talking about expression, how we deal with life, we deal with emotion, deals with things happening to us. Um, I spend a lot of time on social media just looking at how men deal with life and how we're perceived, perspective for men in different situations, for women, kids, and stuff like that. And my guest in a minute, he deals with something, a specific way of expressing emotion that I think is really, and it got me to thinking about me and how I deal with. I'm pretty quiet. My wife is always gets mad at me because I'm not a crier at all. Like I didn't cry when I watched the kids get born. I didn't cry at our wedding. I didn't do any of that stuff. I'm just stoic. I'm that what that man is supposed to be. And it's not that I don't express emotion. It's just that, it's just in my nature to just I deal with it. It's here. I don't let it out to anybody else. And I'm not hiding it, but that's just the guy that I am. So but that's just me, and that's the way I deal with things, and that doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's right for me. I think it's important for men to understand with emotion, with trauma, with stress, how we deal with it. It's incredibly important. And however you need to deal with it is important that you know and that you acknowledge it and that you do it. The worst thing that we men do is hold on to the stuff that's happened to us. We got this stuff sitting here and it's a not getting a promotion, losing a relationship, bad things that happen to us, and we just hold it in and we hold it in. And then at some point, we have to let it out. We're human. And it comes out in a bad way. It comes out in a toxic way. It is important that we express ourselves. And I hope we're going to get into that kind of conversation today. My guest, and I will bring it in. I am going to say Brinderman and then Jonathan Schecter. Did I say it right?
You did. Thank you.
Yes! Yes! Thank you for joining us. How are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Usually when I'm recording podcasts, it's much earlier in the day. So I was really excited just to have a different sort of perspective. Like, oh, this is different energy. And I
Okay.
can I can see if I like to record in the evenings now.
Well, I do it because I have kids, and
Right,
I
right.
know if I did it like 5 or 6, they would run in and could have a cookie or whatever, and it would be ridiculous. So the
Yeah.
nighttime works out. We got a bunch of randoms running around. So, but you let me know how it feels. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like recording at this time of day, and I love this subject. So I'm energetic no matter what time. So I think we'll have a great conversation. Let's go to the bio. One of my favorite parts of the pod. I print it out. I like a good sheet of paper with some info. As an integrative specialist, my practice, and obviously this is Jonathan speaking, my practice is centered around combining breathwork, nervous system regulation, and transpersonal meditation. This unique blend allows me to offer a holistic approach to personal growth and healing. Through breathwork, I guide clients to harness their breathing to influence mental, emotional, and physical states, providing a foundation for deeper work into expanding states of consciousness. In regulating the nervous system, I employ techniques that foster resilience and balance, essential for navigating the challenges that can occur working with plant medicine. The transpersonal meditation aspect of my work connects individuals to a greater sense of self and the world, facilitating profound insights and transformation. My method is tailored to meet the unique needs and journeys of each individual, supporting their path to self discovery and well being. All right,
Sounds good
let's
when you
just
say
say,
it.
I know. Oh, thanks. So, do me a favor, give me a layman's idea of what it is that you do. I feel like I read it. There's some big words in there,
Yeah.
but if I
Yeah.
didn't get it, tell me what you did.
Yeah. So I am a breathwork facilitator. I teach people how to use the breath to work with their nervous system. And really, nervous system regulation is a foundation for the work that I do. The breath can be a way to support that. It can also be a method in and of itself for self discovery, for accessing expanded states of consciousness. So I've gone through a few different lanes where, at first I was, okay, I'm just going to focus on breathing. And then I really sort of swung into working with plant medicine and psychedelics. And where I've kind of landed at the moment is this intersection between breathing and nervous system regulation and the transformational benefits of working with these plant medicines. Because one of the things that I've discovered, and I think a lot of people that are working or curious about working with psychedelics are discovering, is it's not a magic pill. It's not something that's just you're going to take it and it's going to solve all your problems for you. In fact, it might actually shine a light on the work that still has to be done. And so the real transformational benefit of working with psychedelics, for things like overcoming addiction, depression, anxiety, or just connecting with purpose and, living the life that inside of you you're meant to live, comes from what we would call integration. So what happens outside of that ceremony or that journey, the trip, if you want to call it that, from actually taking the insights and the visions and the realizations that you have within that expanded state of consciousness and actually bringing it into your life. And, w- you know, one of the things that I discovered, because I started using breath work as a way to integrate my own psychedelic work. But what I've discovered along the way is that the breath is in itself its own path into these expanded states or non-ordinary states of consciousness, and can be as powerful as any mushroom journey, ayahuasca, any of the classic psychedelics that people are kind of interested in right now. The breath is just as potent, just as powerful.
Okay. All right. So I hear psychedelics and I can imagine obviously there are people looking for you for this work
Right.
and understand what it is. I imagine you would get people who aren't for this,
Yeah.
who may find a problem with the use of psychedelics. What is your response to people who think, I don't know, I mean, I wouldn't want to use
Yeah.
these substances. So what's your response?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's one reason that breath work is so important to me, because breathing is legal everywhere, right? We all can do it, and I definitely work with people that are curious, like maybe they've seen some of the documentaries that have come out, or heard some of the research, or somebody that they know, veterans or friends of theirs, have had their own experiences. They're seeing the transformation that they've gone through, and they're like, "Oh, I'm curious about this, but it's not legal," or they're, a little bit nervous, or, if you're like me, you grew up in the dare era where, all drugs are bad, you can't do that. Right? And so the breath really offers a very accessible way to experience these expanded states of consciousness where healing can happen, where emotional release and catharsis can happen, where we can get insights about what our purpose is, or what needs to change in our life without ever taking any sort of pill or substance or mushroom or anything like that. And then the other piece of it is, what I just described is a lot of my private practice. For the last year or so, I've been working at one of the country's leading treatment centers, a residential treatment center for behavioral health. So there's people that are there for behavioral health and substance abuse. And so I don't talk about psychedelics at all, 3 or 4 days out of the week while I'm there. But what I've discovered is that the folks that have sought this, treatment program, that have to go into an inpatient facility because their life is unmanageable, or their behavior is just not, congruent with being in society and being productive or being happy. They're having suicidal ideations, or, massive depression, or, crippling addiction. In a lot of ways, they're dealing with the same things that people that are approaching intentional psychedelic use for healing are. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of resistance and feeling like blocked. And it's one of the interesting things to me about transformation work is it's usually not so much that we don't know what to do. The information of what we need to do is out there. It's everywhere, right? It's when we know what we need to do, it's the beginning of the year right now, right? January 10th. So everyone's just made their New Year's resolutions. Well, this is about the time where those resolutions start to slip, where we start to fall back on the old habits. And that can be really frustrating, right? And that's what really got me interested in this field in the beginning was seeing, I would have these psychedelic experiences and I would see so clearly what needed to change in my life. And then a month later, I was back doing the same thing. I was feeling the same resistance, the same blocks. And I was wondering, well, why is that? And the people that I was going to these ceremonies with were saying the same thing. The guy next to me, 2 seats over, was saying the same thing. Well, I'm back here again because the problem hasn't fixed itself. I still have this addiction. I still have this depression. And so you know, it's not just the medicine, it's the integration outside of it. And so I find that there's a lot of parallels between both sides of my work. And I think that there's a benefit to learning how to use the breath in a more effective way, whether that's for awareness and clarity, meditation or nervous system regulation, being able to ground yourself, being able to hold the emotions that are coming up in a more holistic and powerful way, or whether you're kind of diving into the deep end of the breathwork pool and actually using it for expansion of consciousness.
I'm going to throw two questions at you just for myself and for anybody listening.
Yeah.
Quickly give us an idea, I mean, if you can, in terms of the breath work that you do.
Mhm.
One and two, really basic. What is, can you define and tell us about our nervous system? Maybe do that first, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there's two main parts of the nervous system and really we're talking about specifically the autonomic nervous system, which is a major system in the body that basically governs our organs and the things that we have in the body that are there to keep us safe. In other words, when we sense danger, when we're in danger, these things happen in the body involuntarily, right? We start to increase the speed of our breathing so that we're getting more oxygen in, so that our blood, our heart can pump faster to get more blood into these parts of the body that we need to protect ourselves, to bring endorphins, cortisol and adrenaline into the body so that we can protect itself. And so the organs, the heart, it also sort of takes care of the energy system in the body. So it governs our digestive system, our sexual function. Because if you think about it, the job of the nervous system is to keep us safe. And if I'm about to get eaten by a bear, the sandwich that I ate 30 minutes ago doesn't really matter. I don't need to digest it, right? And I definitely don't need to have an orgasm, right? So people that have a lot of unresolved trauma, that are living in this chronic state of survival mode, which is really what happens, right? We feel safe and we're socially open. Um, we, can play, we can interact with other people. That's a sense of safety. And when we don't feel that, we're basically in some sort of survival mode. Now there's a spectrum there, right? We might feel a little bit anxious or we might have a panic attack. We might feel a little bit sad, or we might feel so depressed that we can't get out of bed for weeks, or maybe like, I don't even want to live anymore. Right. These are all basically survival functions that the nervous system helps us with. So the nervous system really only knows how to do three things. It knows how to fight something, it knows how to run away from something. And if neither of those works, it knows how to shut down and freeze or play dead, is the way that it looks sort of in the animal kingdom. The classical example is like, an antelope running from a lion, right? The antelope, there's no way that it's going to fight that lion. So that's already off the table. So it's going to run. And when it when running doesn't work, when it knows it's not going to get away, it just collapses. It plays dead. And hopefully the lion is like, well, that's not my meal because it's already dead. There's a biological function there that, you could get into. But when the lion leaves, when the danger is done, that the antelope gets up and it shakes. It completes that traumatic cycle. It shakes it off and then it goes back to being an antelope. It doesn't develop a drinking problem. It doesn't go home and beat its, antelope spouse. That's the natural function of animals in the wild. Well, nobody's ever really taught us as human beings how to complete those cycles in a healthy and productive way. So what do? Because we are left with these unresolved cycles, we turn to self-regulation, self-soothing. And any addiction that you can think of, whether it's something physical like drinking or opiates, or even something like that you would call a process addiction like shopping or scrolling on the phone or sex, things, gambling, things like that. These are all ways that we're trying to soothe and calm the nervous system from and get it out of this survival mode that we just don't know how to get out of on our own. So things like breath work, things like meditation, things like yoga, and there's so many different methods, are ways that we can in a healthy way regulate, calm down, and kind of return to this sense of safety. I think he had 2 questions there, so I got wrapped up in the one.
I just want I mean, when I hear you say breath work and I hear
Yeah,
breath work, and for us, we just think I breathe
right.
in, I
Oh,
breathe
yeah,
out,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So
S Yeah,
go ahead.
so breath work in a nutshell would be breathing in an intentional way to create a particular effect, right? So, a great example just to tie that into the nervous system is if I start to breathe slower, if I breathe through the nose, if I really activate my diaphragm as I'm breathing, right? You might hear, breathe into your belly, right? But actually, the diaphragm goes all the way around us. It's a 360-degree muscle that we have. And so you could even if you put your hands at the bottom of your rib cage, like right where the ends of the ribs meet, and you take a deep breath in through your nose, do you notice the ribs expanding? Not only in the front, but on the sides and even maybe in the back, right? So when we breathe through the nose, when we slow the breath down, especially on the exhale, and when we use that diaphragm to breathe, these are all sending signals to the nervous system that there's no danger, right? To go back to that example of the bear, if a bear walked into the room right now, I would not be taking slow, deep breaths, right? There's
Right.
an automatic response that happens. So we're basically telling the nervous system, we're getting it more used to this state of regulation. We're activating we're moving out of the sympathetic part of the nervous system, which is that fight or flight, and moving into the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, right? So when we're in parasympathetic, we can digest our food, we can go to sleep, we're more socially active, we're calmer, we're more present with our partner or our family or the people that we're around, right? So that's a really important part of using breath work. Now, if I continue to upregulate, if I go into that sympathetic part of the nervous system in an intentional way with certain breathing techniques, eventually, and for some people it's a matter of minutes, for most people I would say it's about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to enter into an expanded state of consciousness. And within that expanded state of consciousness, there's a lot of healing that can happen. The way that I've been trained is in the sort of lineage of Dr. Stan Groff. And Dr. Groff, who is a psychologist, what he wrote about was that we all possess an inner intelligence, an inner healer, and that usually because we are busy, we got to go to work, we got to interact with people, we have to pay taxes and worry about the normal mundane things in life, we sort of push that inner healer aside. We're not connecting with our emotions, we're not connecting with the deeper mysteries of life. But when we enter these expanded states of consciousness, whether it's through breath work, psychedelic medicines, prayer, song, sweat lodges. There's so many different methods, right? That that inner healer can come forth and basically do what needs to be done as far as healing. And I've always thought that it's really interesting that if you look at the ancient cultures in the world, I'll use four just as an example. The words for in Hebrew, Sanskrit, Chinese, and Greek, the word for spirit and breath are the same in each of those four languages, and I'm sure there's more languages where it's like that, right? So, there's this ancient wisdom that we're starting to rediscover, that the breath is a very potent way, to connect with the spirit, and you might call that, the higher self or soul or God or source, whatever it is, the names that you call it, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that connection and being able to access and really be in that energy. And to me, that's one of the most powerful ways that we can use breath work because, like I said, we all can breathe. Most of us, like I've taken ayahuasca where there's a huge prep, uh, you know, uh, process. You have to cut out certain foods and you have to make sure you're not taking any medication, certain types of medication, and you have to, stop doing the things that are sort of addictive in your life. And, they encourage you to stop having sex and all these things. There's a whole litany of things that you need to do to prepare for this potent medicine. With breathing, it's so much more accessible, right? Like I can I can access that same similar state very, very quickly. And I can get out of it if it's overwhelming very, very quickly. So that's another reason why that sort of work, as opposed to psychedelics, is so attractive to people. It's much more accessible.
All right. Thank you so much for answering both of those questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So if you are new to this podcast, welcome. You picked a great episode. We're having a great conversation here. I take the word prize. Four of the letters in the word represent characteristics that I think are good for men. And we're talking about, expression, and we're talking about breath work here and things. So I think we're going to find a way to weave this in.
Yeah.
So the first letter in the word prize is P. The word is purpose. Reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists.
Mm,
Simple. Your purpose. What is
yeah.
your purpose? Done. Done.
That's such a great question. I believe my purpose is to help other people. One of the things that I found that's really interesting, and I've been podcasting myself for a couple of years, and my podcast is about methods of personal transformation, so meditation, breath work, psychedelic medicines, things like that. And so I've talked to 80 some people that are in different fields, whether it's they own an ice bath company or they're a meditation teacher or, they're working with different medicines. And the one thing that I've noticed that's the same for almost all of them is they all came through what you might call a dark night of the soul or a personal tragedy. And the thing that helped them come out the other side of that hero's journey, they had this calling to share it with others and to support other people with that particular method. So for me, um, I went through a pretty traumatic divorce. I was married for 10 years. My ex-wife, I don't know, about maybe 4 or 5 years into the marriage, had a suicide attempt. And I did not know how to help her. I didn't know how to support her. Just to give you some context, because like I work in the mental health field now, right? But at the time, we didn't talk about that incident for a whole year. And it boggles my mind now to think about that. But I had no empathy for her. I had no understanding, right, of what trauma was. And when I came out of the marriage, I did a long, hard look in the mirror and I was like, man, I got some things that I need to change and I need to work on because at the very least, I don't want to end up with the same type of partner and the same sort of dysfunction again. And that search led me into the work that I'm doing now, and breath work became one of the main methods that I was using to heal my own trauma, to connect with um, that inner healer within myself. And so, as that started to happen for me, as I started to go through my own healing process, it became so clear to me that the work that I was doing before that, which was, I'd spent 10 years in corporate finance, that just wasn't what I was called here to do. It wasn't my purpose. And so, yeah, doing trauma work with people, helping them to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Because a lot of the people that I'm working with now that are in the treatment center, that's why they're there, is because they feel hopeless. And to have those moments where I have people coming back to my groups week after week. There's a gentleman there right now. He's a veteran. He's there with PTSD and depression, and he told me this week. He said, this is my favorite group in out of the whole this whole treatment center. And not only like that feels very gratifying. That feels really great to hear. But I get these people in there that like they have this experience, they get really excited about it, and then they start telling some of the other patients, some of the other residents, "Oh, you got to come to this class." And I love that moment where the skeptic has that direct experience and then they become like really excited about it. I had another guy, we had a one-on-one session and he told me, he said, man, when I saw your breathwork group on my schedule, I thought, gee, this guy must be a real hustler. Like he figured out a way to get paid to teach people how to breathe. I've been breathing my whole life. I've never needed a teacher, never had to pay somebody. But then
Right.
he shared with me that in the group, he had this spiritual experience where he connected with the spirit of his mother who had passed. And she was like giving him these words of encouragement and advice that really resonated that he needed to hear. And so he was like, I will never doubt, like, I will come to all your groups. This is really good stuff. And it's those moments that I find really light me up because I get it. I was skeptical too.
Okay. That's a great answer. I hear that. I hear you talking, and what it sounds like to me is we have a whole lot of issues. A lot of mental health is a big thing for me. So we have a whole lot of struggles that we're going through. And there's medicine. There are things that can be given to us that they don't solve the problem. They just kind of mask it or they help.
Right.
And it seems like hearing you talk about breath work, it's like the answer to the issues, to the problems that we have been sitting here in front of us the whole time. And it was just a matter of discovering how to take advantage of it,
Mm.
how to use it. It feels almost spiritual, and obviously that's what you're talking about. I'm an atheist, so I'm not. While I'm not believing of a God or anything, but I'm sure there's spirit or something out there. Is it a religious thing for you when
Mm.
you help, or when? I mean, obviously, if this is what you do, this is something that you've
Yeah.
integrated into your life. Do you find it to be a religious experience, or is it just more spiritual for you and also for the patients that you deal with?
Yeah, I think it's more spiritual. I've practiced Buddhism for about 20 years. So there's meditation and breathing is pretty important to Buddhism. And I think that there's a lot that we can gain from Buddhism, not as a religion, but as a system uh, of looking at the world. And it's funny that there's a lot of overlap now in Western psychology, in quantum physics, in these different areas that totally aligns with Buddhist sort of philosophy and thought. But yeah, I would say to me, it's more of a spiritual experience. One of the things that I've started to do as a facilitator in the last couple of years is a type of trauma therapy called somatic experiencing. And somatic experiencing is based on the work of Dr. Peter Levine. It's primarily a type of trauma, modality of trauma therapy. And one of the things that's interesting about somatic experiencing for me is that it gives us access not only to work and release the trauma that we have inside, but I think it also starts to give us an appreciation of the beautiful things in life, the moments where we feel happy or we feel joy, we feel gratitude, and really encourages us to experience those, to receive them, to lean into it. And as a facilitator, I think one of the things that I'm doing when I'm holding space for someone is in a small way, I'm getting to experience a little bit of what they're going through. I'm lending them my nervous system as a way to help them be regulated or help give them a little bit more capacity so that they can get through that trauma that they've been living with, 24/7. And so those moments do have a spiritual aspect for me. Like I've sat with people, whether it's with breath work or through somatic experiencing, and what they're going through, it brings tears, to me. Or I feel emotion. It's not just like a talk therapy where I'm just sitting there and trying to get them to, you know, sort of get the insight. It's being with them as they're going through their own journey. It's just very beautiful. It's a wonderful question. I've never really thought about it before. So I appreciate you asking it because it's making me think.
Oh, I'm glad. I will say the somatic experience, that's what I think is attracting me because, we have all kinds of, things, psychiatry, and it's always the extreme that
Yeah.
will catch the attention. So I've seen these videos on social media and it's these men and they're just yelling and getting all of it out. And that seems incredibly powerful, amazingly powerful. Based on that, I want to ask, you mentioned that, you help these people and you're giving them a part of you as you're doing this. I ask psychiatrists, therapists this because this work, while it's wonderful and it helps so many people, but you giving of yourself. How do you deal with this when you're done? You've left that
Oh
session
yeah.
and you're in somebody's experience.
Right.
You have a good idea of what they've gone through. How do you handle? What do you do for you after you've dealt with
It's so important, and I, in my naivete, thought that going from 40 hours a week doing spreadsheets in Excel to 20 hours a week, in as a therapist and integrative specialist would be so much easier. Well, I'm only working half the time, and I find myself way more tired, way more wiped out. So what I do is every, it's I have a strong daily practice in terms of my own nervous system regulation and my own emotional regulation. So every morning I practice usually about 30 minutes of meditation. Physical movement, exercise, or yoga is really important to me. Every night, I do 30 minutes of what's called heart coherence breathing. Heart coherence breathing is a really simple method that helps to build nervous system resiliency. It helps to improve a metric called heart rate variability, which is a measure of basically to boil it down, it's the health of our nervous system, but it's the difference between the heartbeat when we're breathing in and breathing out. The heart is not a metronome. So there's these tiny little variations each breath. And the more variability that we're able to handle, the healthier the nervous system is. It also lowers blood pressure and heart rate. So I do 30 minutes of that every night. And then usually 3 to 4 times a week, I'm trying to get into an ice bath for 3 to 4 minutes. That's something I've been doing for the last 5 years. I try to get into a sauna, even though I don't have one of those at the house. There's a place here in town that I go to where I can do ice bath and sauna together. Um, I do my own work. One of the reasons that I started doing somatic experiencing as a facilitator is that I've been a client for close to 4 years now, and it's been super transformational to me. I'm doing regular breath work, journeys, the deeper, sort of transformational breath work that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, so those are some of the ways that I'm trying to take care of myself. And I have to say, I find it almost like a cheat code is that my partner is a trauma therapist also. So we kind of we like understand each other in that way. Like when I was working in finance, sometimes she would get done and I'd want to share with her. I'd want to connect and she'd be like, "Babe, I'm spent. Like I need like I'm not here. I can't hold space for you. I can't hear about your bad day. Like leave me alone." And I used to get really upset. I'd be like, "Man, like what's going on here?" And now I'm in the same boat. Like I understand that also. So I think we understand and support each other with the the fact that sometimes we need that space. We need that time to decompress. um but yeah, for me, self-care is just paramount to being able to continue doing this work and not burn out.
That's great. And I obviously the work that you do, it has to be profound doesn't feel like the right word, but what you do, this it takes so much. It feels tiring. Hearing you talk about it, knowing that you're doing amazing work, but it feels like it would be kind of exhausting because you
Mhm.
you really have to dive in, and it's physical and it's mental and it's emotional. It's everything. So to give that to somebody and then just go about your day when you're done, I respect infinitely, what you do. So wow, it's that's fantastic. But I think it kind of flows into the next letter, and that's R. The word is resilience. Now, what you do based on what you've talked about kind of comes from the experience you had, that divorce that you talked about.
Yeah.
So obviously, resilience is important to you and important to all of us. Expound upon all of that in terms of resilience and what you do for your patients and for yourself, whatever you can.
Yeah, so, I think resilience is a really important idea, concept, thing to keep in mind when you're doing trauma work. Um, you know, the the body, the nervous system only has a certain capacity, and capacity could be another word for resilience, right? So, I like to give this example when I'm teaching about this stuff is like if I have a bottle of water or glass, and that represents my nervous system and my resilience, my capacity. It doesn't matter whether I take a bucket and pour it in, and the glass is overflowing, or if it's drop by drop. If I don't have a way of working with that, of helping to drain that water out, once it overflows, I'm overwhelmed and there's nothing that I can do, right? And I'm going to start to, in the long run, do something that's either healthy or unhealthy, whatever it is, to try to bring that, system back into regulation. So to me, the value of resilience is that it helps to make the glass bigger. It helps to make my vessel bigger. It helps to build my capacity so that I can handle more, right? Um, I had this situation last night when I came home from the treatment center. My partner was giving me a hard time, kind of joking around, and because I was telling her about this pretty, intense session that I had had that like really just kind of left me like, whoa, okay. And she, and she was saying, Remember when you first started doing this work and you were like, what am I going to do when I have these really tough sessions or I'm having a bad day? And I have to go hold space for somebody else." And she said, "Well, it sounds like you figured it out because I had a phone call with somebody right before my first session, and it left me in this really angry mood." And I was able to just kinda set it aside and, do my job and be present for people. But then as I was coming home, I started to think about it and I was like, oh yeah, I was really angry before I started work today and I needed to talk to somebody about it. I needed to come home and journal about it. And I'm actually thinking about doing a podcast about it just to like really, I feel really strongly about this particular topic. But um, yeah, when I first started doing ice baths, there was one day where three different places, it was like a book I was reading and a podcast and something on social media that was all recommending, do cold exposure, do ice baths. And there are health benefits to it that I don't really get into. I don't really care at all what the health benefits are. The benefit of doing ice baths to me is exactly what I heard from these three messages that first time, which was if you voluntarily do things that are hard that you don't want to do, and you do them voluntarily, it's going to make doing the things that you don't have a choice about easier. And at the time, I had just started going through that divorce, and my ex wife had brought lawyers into the picture. And there was nothing that I wanted less in the world than to have to go hire a lawyer and deal with this thing that I thought was going to be an amicable split. I thought we could handle it like two grown adults that, right? And so I was like, okay, well, here's the situation. This sucks and I don't have any control over it. So I wonder if I start doing something every day that sucks that I am voluntarily going into, will it make it easier to deal with? And the answer is yes. And I'll caveat that by saying, after 5 years, there is not one day that I am excited to get into the ice bath. It's not like I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh boy, I get to do that today, right? Every time there is that voice inside of me that's like, you could do this tomorrow. Maybe you need to change the water in the tub. Like, are you coming down with a cold? Are you? "Oh, I gotta finish that podcast. I gotta finish this. I gotta finish that." Like, you just do it later, right? But when I get in, I always feel better. And there's about 30 seconds that really suck. And then the rest of the time is can actually be really enjoyable. And the enjoyable part of it is for me is that I overcame that mental block. And I overcame that feeling that's like, yo, don't do this. This is dumb. Like,
Wow. Wow. Hearing you talk about it, I had a question that come to mind. You help people, and I obviously you come up with exercises and things with the breath work to help people deal with their issues. And I was wondering, is it when they're done, and I speak as a layman who knows nothing about this. I don't know if you're ever cured of an issue that you have, or you're
Mhm.
just getting past it. Is once you've taught somebody this breath work and whatever they need, is this something they're doing forever? Or, oh, okay, I got past this, I stopped. Are you changing their lifestyle with what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. You got really good questions.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, I think it depends. I think there's certain things that probably will be there forever. But that being said, like I'll just use myself as an example. I go through seasons, and I go through seasons where, say, maybe I need to do a breathwork journey where I'm, breathing for an hour to 90 minutes. And I'm having these big cathartic experiences and a lot of insights and a lot of emotional dumping, and kind of release. I've gone through seasons where I need to do that once a week. I've gone through seasons where I need to do it once a month. Same thing with the ice bath, like um, I always try to turn the shower to cold for like the last minute or so of my shower, but there's times where I'm like really sort of religious about I got to do this ice bath 4 times a week. I got to get my time in. There's other times where I'm like feeling pretty good and I can maybe go to once a week or twice a week. But the things that are really, really important to me are things that I've committed to daily. And so I think it's up to the individual, but and there are seasons that we go through. There's different when you have this robust toolkit of different methods that you can go to for resiliency, for stress and emotional relief, right? You get to open the toolbox and go, okay, what am I going to do now? What's going to be helpful for me here? Like I've gone through seasons where I'm journaling every day, and other times where, once or twice a week is good enough for me, you know? Um, for me, the non-negotiables are mindfulness meditation, and because of the profound impact that it's had on me, the heart coherence breathing. Those, even if I don't do anything else, I'm gonna get those in at the beginning and end of my day. And I know that it's gonna set me in a good place. It's gonna set me up. And I think that mindfulness is something that everyone should be practicing. And is, mindfulness helps you off of the cushion. It's not the meditation itself that's the benefit. It's how it changes you, and how the benefits and effects that it has for you in the rest of your life. And then the coherence breathing has been such a game changer with, with data to back it up. I started, when I had a shock trauma. I was severely dysregulated in my nervous system. I was basically almost having panic attacks, and then I started having tachycardia, where my heartbeat, like just sitting here talking to you, not doing any physical activity, my heart rate would go up over 180. It would feel like my heart was just beating out of my chest. I was going to have a heart attack. And after I went to 3 different cardiologists and made sure that there wasn't anything actually wrong with my heart, we started to dial in on that this was how the trauma was manifesting in my body. And one of the things that really helped to cure that was the coherence breathing. And because I was so neurotic and paranoid about it, I was like, man, I don't want this sort of subjective data. I want hard science, right? So I'm able now to see how my overall resting heart rate has gone down, how that heart rate variability has increased, how I'm sleeping better, all these different metrics based on the breath work that I do. So those two things are definitely non negotiable. And then everything else kind of, I feel like it ebbs and flows. So I think what I help my clients to do, and I do this myself, is I want to build a routine, a practice, a recipe, if you will, for wellness and, living your best life. And just because you're serving that recipe for, 3 or 4 months, doesn't mean that you have to eat it for the whole year. We can switch up the menu a little bit as needed.
That's a great answer. So you have the benefit or the purpose of helping people, and you've got a lot of things in your toolbox, things that you can do to help people. Have you ever had a situation where I don't know if you use everything that you know to help some people,
Mm.
but have you come up with an exercise or something to help somebody that you realize, wow, that might actually work for me? And I didn't realize it until I saw the effect it had on a person. Was there something that you didn't use a lot, but then when you did, wow, look at that effect. That might help. Maybe that's the missing piece for me or for another patient. It's really my question is really,
Mm.
do you enjoy learning or do you enjoy kind of teaching or employing what you do?
Oh yeah, I love learning. I think the relationship that I've been in for the last 4 years with my current partner has really helped with that. She was already a trauma therapist when I started dating her, and even before I started dating her, and so she's turned me on to so many different modalities. Like she uses something called EMDR, which is another type of trauma therapy, eye movement desensitization, repatterning, right? And uh, I didn't know anything about that. I've ended up using that for myself, and I've also started to incorporate certain aspects of that in my own protocols for working with clients. The somatic experiencing was another one. Like um, somebody told me about it, and I was listening to them and I thought, "Oh, gee, that's really interesting." Um, that sounds like something that would be helpful for me. So I went and found a therapist that was doing it. And now 4 years later, I'm training to become, a full certified facilitator in it myself. Um, and yeah, breath work was the same way. It was, going and trying these different methods and then kind of landing on the things that really resonated uh, to me. So, yeah, I think I'm always learning. I'm always trying to find something new, and there's always that's a really interesting thing about healing and being in sort of the mental health world, is there's always something new to kind of learn in, I guess, the health world in general, right? Like
Right.
the things that we thought of maybe 20 years ago, some of them are outdated now. Some of them we've learned more. So yeah, I try to learn for sure. And but the thing is, like, I also believe in, one of my coaches told me this, and it really resonated. She said, "You can only help people as deeply as you've helped yourself. You can only take people as deeply as you've gone yourself." And she said part of being a coach, you know, if you think of coaching as a mountain, well, if you're here, you can't really help somebody that's here, but you
Mm,
can help everyone that's down here, right? And as you go through your own journey, you're continuously climbing that mountain. So there's more and more people that you can help as well. Um, so yeah, I think that authenticity and my experience with the methods that I teach and I support people with, um, is something that's a strength as far as the benefit that I'm able to give to them. And it's a, to I know we've strayed out of the psychedelic world, and that's totally fine, but it's a really interesting thing as these medicines become more available. And the FDA is now about to decriminalize psilocybin and MDMA for therapeutic use. There's a lot of people that are trying to jump into that don't have that experience. And to me, that's a little frightening. I want to work with people that have gone through that journey themselves, that have some sort of experience, not that just went to like a weekend workshop and got a certification. And that's the thing. It's like there are people that offer weekend um, certifications for breath work, or for other modalities, right? I I'm not really supportive of that. Like,
of
it's
course.
it's sort of like, a long time ago, I worked in the insurance industry, and sometimes people would come to me and they would say, "Well, Jonathan, I've been with your agency for 10 years, but Joe Schmo down the street is going to give me $50 a year less. So why should I stay with you?" And I say, well, you're free to do what you want, but the thing about insurance is you're not going to discover how good or bad it is until you actually need it. So it's like you might take a weekend, breathwork certification, or you might go onto YouTube and start, watching one of the hundreds of breathwork videos that promise these big emotional releases, or these big, big out of body experiences. And if nothing happens, nothing bad happens, it's great. But what are you gonna do if something, you know, goes wrong? Or if you have to hold space for somebody, if they start to, have these big emotional cathartic releases, or um, I'll give you an example. Like, when I was doing my training, not only were we getting trained for breath work, but there's a certain type of body work. It's like a release work that helps people move through these really heavy emotional states that might come up, where they just it's not completing. There's like a physical feeling in the body, right? And w- as we're doing this training, they said, so now we're gonna teach you about what happens if somebody starts to choke themselves during the breath work. And I'm like, what? And they said, yeah, generally when this happens, it's because when this breather was being born, their umbilical cord was wrapped around their neck. That's a traumatic experience, and that energy is stored in the body. And now, in this expanded state of consciousness, it finally has a chance to release, and they want to choke themselves, right? And I thought, gee, that when's that going to happen? Right. And lo and behold, I was doing a breathwork session with two people one day. And I saw them going for it. I saw them, their hands coming up, and immediately I knew what to do. Right. And I was able to jump in and hold the space and support them. And they ended up having this huge release and corrective experience through that. In fact, they told me before they left the treatment center that it was kind of the turning point in their therapy. But had I not known what to do there, or started to get into my own head or freak out, there's no way that I could have supported um, that situation. So I think it behooves us that are holding space for others or really doing this deep work with them, that we do our own work so that we can be in the best space mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually as possible, to support them. And I really respect that, you know?
You kind of answered my next question, but I was going to ask, in terms of the use of psychedelics, what kind of precautions do you take before and during when you're working with somebody, because they're in a very vulnerable
Yeah.
position, I would assume. So
Yeah. Well, so for breath work especially, there's a pretty extensive screening process that I go through. For some of the functional breathing, for meditation, things like that, that's pretty much accessible to anyone. But taking somebody into an expanded state of consciousness, there's definitely a screening process. I want to make sure that that there's not certain mental or emotional conditions that are happening, or at least I know about them, or there are certain health, conditions that would be contraindications for doing breath work. And then I believe that that integration process really begins with preparation. So even before taking somebody into, say, a big heroic sort of ceremony, or a macro experience, I'm going to really make sure that they have the tools and the resources to support themselves. Do you have a mindfulness practice? Are you able to start to connect with different parts of yourself? Or are you just identified and fused to whatever comes up? Right. And that's you. Or can I say, oh, there's this part of me that's feeling this way. There's this experience that's happening. I know it's not me. Right. Like, um, I'm so anxious right now versus I'm feeling anxiety. There's a big difference there, right? And depending on what it is that they are wanting to work with as far as different medicine, there might be some dietary restrictions or some things that we're doing leading up to their ceremony. I'm going to ask them to start to look at, what's your diet like? And not just the food that you're eating, or what you're drinking. What kind of media are you consuming? What's your news consumption situation like? What kind of music are you listening to? What kind of people are around you, and what sort of energy are they, sort of are you consuming from them? So that you can be in a good position to be open and to receive, right? Because part of the healing from these expanded states of consciousness comes from the willingness to surrender and not give up, but to be open to whatever is going to come up, to be able to trust the process, and not try to contract and or run away from uncomfortable material that comes up. It's one of the reasons that I think the ice bath, for instance, is such a powerful practice, because um I I tell my clients, like, it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but if you keep having these experiences, sooner or later, something challenging is going to come up. Something that you want to get away from is going to come up. And it's not comfortable at all, right? So having some experience and some training in whatever way you wanted to do it is in sitting with discomfort, in being able to breathe into it and knowing that it's going to pass, right? And being able to ground yourself is invaluable.
We've been talking for a while. I'm not going to hold you up much longer, but I'm going to ask if you can, for people, and I know I've had some moments where I felt anxiety, where I felt like I'm uncomfortable in a moment and not know how to handle it. Is there anything you can suggest or even show us a little bit,
Yeah,
a breathing technique, something in I'm in some shit right now and I don't know how to handle it, but maybe something to do to feel better
yeah.
in the moment?
Yeah, I love it. So let's do some heart coherence breathing together. So if you're in a place where you are safe to do so and it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes. You don't have to, but finding a place that's comfortable to sit and just allowing your spine to be straight but not rigid. You could think of a string that starts at your bottom of your spine and comes out of the top of your head and is gently being pulled upward. So not rigid, not adding more tension, but just having this straightness to your spine. And you could even, as you take a breath in through the nose, feel how the spine slightly lifts. And then as you exhale, feeling yourself settle. And then just starting to bring your attention to your breath, just noticing where your breath is in the body right now. And if it feels right, we're going to breathe through the nose. So you can just begin by just noticing what the breath feels like coming in and out of the nose. It's nice just to notice where you're at before we start to change the breath at all. And if this is a new thing to you, if it feels unfamiliar, you could put one hand on your chest and one on your belly and just start to breathe a little bit deeper so that you feel that hand on your belly start to move. Just really feeling the belly expand, the diaphragm filling. As you continue to breathe a little bit deeper, a little bit slower. And now, for a couple minutes, we're going to bring our breath into coherence with our heart. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to breathe in for a count of 5 seconds and out for a count of 5 seconds. So just allowing your breath to come in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in and out, in and out. And just keeping that cadence, slow, deep breaths in and out of the nose. And we'll go for another minute. Just noticing your body, torso, your belly, how it moves with these slow, deep breaths. If the mind wanders, just focusing on that sensation of air coming in and out. And you can stay with this for as long as it feels comfortable. But just as a way to bring our podcast to a close here, just begin to notice where your body feels support in this moment. That could be your feet on the floor or the body's connection to your chair, whatever you're sitting or laying on. Noticing that feeling of support. And I invite you just to let your eyes, if you're not driving, go where they want to go. Just let them explore your space a little bit. Let them wander. Slowly, just taking in that external environment and just also noticing any sounds that you're hearing, any other sensations, maybe the clothes on your skin, any smells or tastes. But just giving yourself a few seconds just to notice how you're feeling right now in the external environment in this moment. This is just a brief introduction to orientation or orienting, just allowing the nervous system to get that evidence that there's no danger in our immediate surrounding. And as the nervous system relaxes because there's nothing happening on the outside, it makes it easier to turn that awareness inward. So that's something that I recommend to all my clients actually, to practice that orientation 4 or 5 times a day, 30 to 60 seconds. It's also really wonderful if you are noticing a lot of uh, excitement or activity or big emotions, whether they're sort of negative, challenging emotions, or even I'll orient if find myself starting to get like overwhelmed with like tears or sort of joy. It's just allowing myself just to kind of okay, let me come back into the external world so that I can be present here without getting overwhelmed by my emotional state. So yeah, there's a couple of things that you can do. I recommend that coherence breathing for 5 to 10 minutes a day. You can do it once or twice, maybe in the morning or at night, whatever feels good to you. But I'm a big proponent of starting small, and then as you notice the impact and the benefits that you're getting, letting that propel you into practicing more rather than saying, "Oh, you should be practicing 30 minutes," and then, you know, they're gonna give up after a couple of days, right?
That was great. That was excellent. Oh my god, I feel that I know that was
Yeah,
a few minutes, but that feels better. Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
I'm in a better
So
place.
so
Yeah,
so one question for you, how do you know that you feel better?
that's a really good question. I don't know. I just feel different now than how I felt
Mhm.
4 or 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
It feels a bit I don't know. I'm not that I was in any danger or anything. It
yeah,
feels a bit more secure right now than it did a few minutes ago. That's the
yeah.
best way I can describe it.
Yeah, so it's worthwhile to start to investigate that, right? Like as we start to notice, that's part of the somatic experiencing and part of being more in touch with like the nervous system is like, okay, I like this or I feel better, I feel calmer. Why is that? And that's part of the work that I'm doing is like getting people to notice where those feelings are in the body so that we can notice them easier, so that we can connect with them easier. And sometimes it's not like a good feeling, it's just, oh, that anxiety went away, right? And I'm sort of laughing in my head that I went from excited podcast voice Jonathan into nervous system somatic experiencing meditation Jonathan like really quickly, right? But even I feel more grounded, more kind of settled as opposed to this really excited I'm on a podcast energy that I had, for the last hour. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. I have a lot of research to do. I got a lot to look into. How can the listeners find you, your work, and what you do? Where are you available?
The easiest answer to that is anywhere on the internet that's Blue Magic Alchemy is me. I'm the most active on Instagram, but I also have a YouTube channel, TikTok, Facebook. You can reach me at bluemagicalchemy.com, although I prefer beacons.ai/Blue Magic Alchemy. But definitely, I'm very active on social media, and anywhere you find Blue Magic Alchemy, that's me. I also have a podcast called The Vital Point, that's available on all major platforms and YouTube as well. So yeah, happy to chat about how I can support you.
Right. Wonderful. This was a great conversation. I got a lot out of this. So I appreciate the time that you gave to me and to our listeners. And I will everything that he mentioned, by the way, in ways of reaching him will be in the episode notes. And this was great. This is good. We record a little bit later. This feels like the best way to kind of ease out into the evening. Now you said you typically
Yeah.
record earlier. I do this later. And for me, when I'm done, and like you were saying, this is a hyped up feeling. I'm asking
Mhm.
questions and I'm involved in everything. But this is one of the few times where, we'll finish in a minute or two and I'm just gonna sail away and just kind of ease off. Thank you.
Nice.
This is one of the few times I got different feeling from speaking about it.
Mm,
Thank you so much. This was
very
great.
cool. Yeah, my
All
pleasure.
right.
Thanks for having me.
Oh no, anytime. And I leave my guys, everybody with this. I hope you're as relaxed as I am. This was so nice. This was great. I feel good. When you can really sit there and really concentrate on your breathing, it's a different feeling to really sit there and acknowledge that you're breathing and feel your body doing it. I hope it worked out for you. Um, Listen to this episode and maybe take the last 5, 6 minutes of this if you want, at least with Jonathan, and maybe use it put it into your life. This was a fantastic episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You know how I end this. You're special. You are needed. You are valued, man. I do these episodes to give you opportunities to express yourself. This is something different. This is a different way to express your feelings. Really look into this. If hearing Jonathan speak, maybe this is something that you need. Maybe this is the way for you to kind of get out all the feelings, all the trauma, all the issues that you've been dealing with and you didn't know how to get it out or deal with them. Maybe this is something for you. But most importantly, however you deal with your trauma, your issues, you do it so that you're here. You're valued, you're important, and somebody is waiting to hear your voice, to see you walk in, to laugh, joke, talk with you, anything. You being here makes somebody else's day. You being here is the reason somebody got up out of bed and went to work. And they didn't want to, but they like, oh my God, I'm gonna see such and such. And my day is gonna be better because of it. So this only works if you show up. So you have to show up. You need to be here. We love you. We need you. Thank you to Jonathan for coming on here and great experience. But most importantly, thank you to you for being here, listening, watching, learning with me. And never forget that you are a fantastic man and you're the problem. And I'll see you next week.